morning. Welcome to our session. My name is Kyle Linz. I've already sort of introduced myself this morning. This is my wonderful colleague, Diana Hellier. We're both librarians here at the University of Hartford. We kind of want to talk to you today about a collaborative partnership that we've struck with the first-year writing program on campus that's been going on for a few years now. We're going to talk a little bit about our experience and see if there's any stuff that you can adapt for your own institution. So throughout the session, we hope that you will learn how to grow and maintain a partnership on your own campus, create student-centered library instruction, and really incorporate some different instructional concepts into your own instruction. Before we get into the actual curriculum, I should really give you some of the background information on how this started. So, when I started working in the reference department here, we had a lot of inconsistency in our instructional method. I did find that most of the classes we were teaching were like these one-shot sessions for the first-year writing students. We would get some of the upper-level classmen and some subject-specific classes, but the bulk of it is this, first-year composition, 50-minute one-shot. How do you service that, right? We did not have any sort of departmental consistency. There was no instructional curriculum. There was not a lot of pedagogy being inserted into the lesson planning. There wasn't really a lot of lesson planning that went on. Frankly, the format for the most part was just straight lecture. That whole stage on the stage, people standing up in front of the podium, giving students the same library demo of the databases, and it wasn't necessarily differentiated or tailored to any assignment. A lot of times freshmen would come in, and if they came in like twice in a semester, once in the composition class and once in maybe it's like a dialogue or first year experience, they would get the exact same lesson, okay? The other thing that was not happening, which was a huge red flag, was that there was no assessment going on, right? And you all know about the various accreditation standards that we have to adhere to. But more importantly, assessment is the way that we change our teaching, right? It's how we make informed decisions on what we should be doing. So none of that was happening. It was pretty frustrating to me. Diana was not here yet. We'll talk about that in a minute. And this is a lot of what we were seeing. I'm sure this resonates with some of you, right? Most importantly, though, is this anxious student, right? The research anxiety that we all seem to see with students, especially now. I've been seeing it more and more lately. So of course, I wanted to change the world, right? Luckily, through just a campus event, I struck up a working relationship with Beth Richards, who happens to be the director of the first and second year writing program on campus. She had already been looking at the curriculum in her department, and it had been some time since it had been changed. It kind of did not align with the expanding avenues of information, like how all the source types and things that are available now. And she had already been thinking about overhauling the curriculum anyway. What she also wanted to do was to involve the library, right? Because first year writing is all about academic writing research, and you really can't do that without addressing the information literacy concept and involving the library. That's what we're experts in, supposedly. So over the summer of 2015, we set up a series of meetings where we kind of found a quiet place to sit and go over, mapping out the curriculum both at the departmental level, but also the library curriculum that would overlay on top of this and support the mission of what she was trying to do. What came out of these meetings was that we agreed to pilot a sort of sample curriculum throughout the 2015-2016 academic year, and then in the summer of 2016, they would take a bunch of student writing and assess it at the departmental level to see how they were doing. Unfortunately, I was not involved in that assessment process. I think she really wanted to address some instructor issues as well, so she really kept it in the department. But some other things that happened after that, she made it mandatory for the Writing 110 students to come in. So Writing 110, we'll get into the difference between 110 and 111 in a couple of minutes. 110, it is now mandatory, supposedly, for instructors to bring the classes in, but we all know how that works. You know, you have instructors who think they can do it themselves, or, you know, they just want to be obstinate just because, and they don't bring them in here. But I can say that, while I don't have the specific percentage, the visits to the library by the 110 classes has really skyrocketed. So most of the instructors seem to have taken this to heart and bring them in. We've also had almost a complete staff turnover in the reference department. So first at the end of 2015, the summer of 2015, Jillian Maynard came on board. She's actually not here. She's home enjoying time with her new baby, which is wonderful. Otherwise, she would have been in this presentation. And then in the fall of 2016, Diana came on board. So now we have like an amazing department where we work really well together. A curriculum appears, okay? We've gone from no framework, no curriculum, no formal anything, to a formal curriculum that all three of us teach when we do these sessions. Some things that we've changed, we've inserted a lot of the active learning, right? We involve students in the learning process. So no more are we standing up here right in front of the podium, you know, droning on for 50 minutes to an hour and 15 minutes with students. We've, you know, it's not mandatory, but we've kind of instituted, like, or demanded that we are equals and partners with the faculty. So when they contact us to do instruction, we very strongly suggest that they do certain things. Pairing the instruction with an assignment, right? We don't want to see your students at the beginning of the semester. That may be when you want to bring them in for your syllabus, but they're not going to retain any of the information. Giving us the assignment, okay? And in some cases, this has worked out really well because they now come to us and ask us for feedback on their actual prompts, okay? And most importantly, we've inserted some assessment into the curriculum so we can really gauge how we're doing. Rinse and repeat. So there is no ego in this curriculum design. We are constantly revising it. I think we are on iteration 4 or 5 at this point, right? We are constantly just re-examining and seeing what works and what doesn't. Okay, so building the curriculum. These are some of the pedagogical concepts that we've inserted. So we've decided, because we're fortunate enough to see both the Writing 110 students and the 111 students, that we've created this sort of scaled instruction. We start with the basics in 110, and since it's supposedly mandatory, they should all take it. And in 111, we're allowed to build upon that and really get into the advanced searching and align that with what they're doing. We've also instituted anticipatory sets. And for anybody who doesn't know what those are, is not familiar with the concept, that is a very short activity that we have when the students enter the class. And it serves to focus their attention. It introduces some of the concepts that we're going to cover. And really it acts as an icebreaker between the students, because they talk amongst themselves, and us, because they'll ask us questions. Diana is going to actually do the fun part of this, where she shows you actual snippets of our lessons, so we will show you the anticipatory sets that we use. We've also started chunking content, right? There still has to be a lecture component to the lesson, because we have to give them the information somehow, but we don't slam them with all of the concepts at once. We follow a format where we introduce a major concept, we have a hands-on activity, we come back and introduce another concept, and then we give them another hands-on activity, and that seems to work well to keep their attention. And finally, that active learning component. We make them somewhat responsible for their learning and involve them in the process, so they're starting to take some ownership of what they're doing. Okay, so Writing 110 as a course is an introductory course that all of our students take, unless they have managed to test out of it or they are a transfer student. this is not a research intensive course. This is what I like to call the great equalizer, right? I don't know what your experience is, but sometimes when I do an instruction session, I ask students to kind of raise their hands and formulate, like, how many of you have used a database before? Sometimes almost everybody does, sometimes almost no one does, so you never know. It's always a mixed bag of what people are coming in from high school, like what their experience has been. They also learn the critical reading component, okay? How many of you have had a student come to you and freak out because they have like a stack of 5 or 6 peer-reviewed articles and they can't possibly find the time to read the entire thing, right? So part of what they learn in this class is how to kind of skim and synthesize information. The other portion of the critical reading is that they get exposure to different types of sources and how they should be applying them to their own writing, okay? For the most part, they do weekly journaling work, so they'll have to react to very short readings, I think, in their text. The professors are supposed to give as a baseline 1 to 2 major essays throughout the semester, and Beth has kept it as an argumentative type of essay because students actually find it easier to handle that in their first semester, as opposed to an expository essay, which they'll focus on 111. The professor generally defines the topic for the student or provides topics for them to choose from, and they will have the majority of their sources provided to them to write this paper, right? So they have all these seed sources. There is not a lot of emphasis on peer review at this point, right? So they just really can't handle it, and they don't necessarily need it to write an argumentative essay. If they are given a peer-reviewed source, it's usually one of these seed sources. They do have to find a couple of sources to write their essays, and to do this, they can pretty much just use basic database searching, right? So you'll see in our lesson, you know, a general database like Academic Search Premier is pretty appropriate at this level. Our curriculum, and you'll see that both of them kind of have these 4 major components. We start with an anticipatory set in 110, and it serves to introduce the concept of databases, especially for those who haven't used one. Our slide presentation is based on the information timeline, so we introduce them to different source types. We take one event, it's carried throughout the presentation. We talk to them about the different periods of time and the different types of sources that are generated as we get further away from the event. But most importantly, with the information timeline, we include how to apply these sources to their writing. Again, I don't know what your experience is, but for the most part, when we introduce databases to students, they can pick it up pretty quickly. The 2 areas that they struggle the most with are topic selection and like narrowing and broadening, and application of sources. They have a stack of sources, they found what's required of them, how do they use it, okay? So what we try to address in the information timeline, like, so, you know, you have this magazine article, how am I gonna use that in my paper? Where is it appropriate? We give them an activity, which Diana will share with you. Then we come back up to the front, we give them a basic database introduction. It's usually Academic Search Premier. It's very rudimentary keyword searching. We point out the filters, we may or may not use them. And then we give them the hands-on portion of the session. This is why it's important to pair the lesson with an assignment, because then they have this incentive to now actually pay attention and apply what we just showed them to their own work. Finally, at the end, we pass out an index card. Again, we'll show this, and they answer one reflective question that we then collect to sort of inform our own teaching. Next up, we have Writing 111. This is generally taken in the 2nd semester of the freshman year. Unlike 110, this is not mandatory for every student. If any student is enrolled in one of the arts and science programs, so like history, sociology, communications, etc., they're not taking this class. They apparently get writing injected into their program of study through writing across the curriculum. I don't know how well that is working. We get all of like the music students, the art students, any of the engineering, health science, education, etc. we do have a high percentage of instructors that will bring their classes in here for instruction, and because we know now that they've had 110, hopefully, we try to build upon this, right? This class, unlike 110, really does focus on the research process. They, again, have that weekly, journaling sort of coursework that they do where they respond to the readings. But now they're writing 2 to 3 major essays, and while one might be argumentative, usually in the beginning of the semester, the others are expository, right? They have to actually, come up with a research question and a thesis, and then provide the evidence that goes along with that. They may get one seed source, which will define the tone of the topic, and then they're given freedom to choose their own topic based on that seed source, but they have to provide all of the evidence, and the evidence has to be peer-reviewed. Anything beyond peer-reviewed material is considered, like optional, like extra beyond the source count that they have. So all of a sudden, advanced database use becomes really important. Luckily, because they have the basic database use and an understanding of the different source types from 110, we can now go into, the creation of complex search strings. This is where we start to talk about like Boolean operators and all of the other search syntax that's involved in searching a database. Just like 110, it follows a similar format. We start with the anticipatory set, although this time it's not the introduction to databases. It really talks about keyword variation, like synonyms and things like that. We have a presentation where we talk about the different Boolean operators, the syntax, etc. And then we have a group activity. You will see all of this in a minute. We come back to the front. We do advanced database use, so we really start applying those filters. We show them how to put in a complex search string into the advanced search boxes, and then we turn them loose. We make them do it on their own. And then again, we do the index card assessment. So I am going to turn it over to Diana, who's going to give you the fun portion of the presentation, and I'm going to act as Vanna over here.
So this first set of lessons that we do is for writing 110. So as the students come in, this is our anticipatory set. As they come in, we tell them find these boots online, and pretty much leave it at that. And they give me deer in the headlights, like no, actually find these boots online. And so they'll spend some time doing that as they're coming in. They'll notice that they kind of talk to each other and help each other out on how to start. Then after a few minutes, after they've all come in, talk to the professor and such, we'll come back together and I'll ask them, so where'd you go to start finding these boots? And they kind of hesitate. No, tell me, and 99% of the time is Google Images or Google. And then start, so what'd you use as terms to look for the boots? And they'll say red boots, old, worn, those kinds of things. And really the idea of this anticipatory set is to say, it's kind of relate how they went about searching for these boots to how they're going to be searching in the databases. So you might not know exactly the right terms to use, but you try some things out, you might need to edit it and go through that process. And then we show them where what the boots actually are. And I always tell them that, which is absolutely true. The first time when Kyle and Jillian brought this assessment to me, I tried it myself before looking at what it was, and I could not find them. So the point of the anticipatory set is to not find them. If they don't find them, it's fine. Some of them actually do them. It's very impressive. Sometimes you look at them like, oh yeah, those are Wolverine boots. I'm like, shh. It's about the process. It's about getting them to start thinking about how you'll use the databases. After that, we go into our information timeline, and this is a segment from the middle of it, so that's why it looks like it's the middle of a presentation, because it is. So we use the information timeline, as Kyle said, we take one event and string it through the entire timeline. So the event we use is the 2016 presidential elections. And so we'll break it down into 3 different slides. The first slide for each part of the timeline will tell you what the sources you'll find at that time are. So weeks after an event occurs, you'll find newspapers and magazines, a little bit of information about what that'll mean, what kind of stuff you'll see in those sources. Then we show them some examples, So for the presidential election, you saw newspapers and magazines and such. And after that, as Kyle said, the most important part is we tell them how they'll use these sources in their papers. So, good current information, provides cultural context, that sort of thing. And it's not necessary. It's good that one part of it is seeing the information timeline and how information is created, but the most important part for us is to show them how the sources that they're using fall and where how to use them. After that, we'll do the information timeline activity. Every group, and we kind of group it how you are at tables, gets a folder, Kyle is showing you. In the folders, there is one of each type of sources. So each packet all has information about the same source. The packets are about the Boston Marathon bombings. And there'll be one source for each part of the information timeline. And they have to look at the sources and lay it out in the timeline. So they're looking at the sources, determining what they are, and putting it in order as appropriate. We will be, in the fall, having an activity, a worksheet to go with it, which will really serve as just additional assessment for the class. So that is coming up. After the information timeline, after we talk about that a bit, we'll come back together and do the database searching. This is our demo. And as Kyle said, we only will do one database, and it's usually Academic Search Premier. We'll show them how to access it, get it from our library's website to the database. Some of the filters, like Kyle said, very basic, maybe find full text, maybe publication date, really leave it at that. And then just the general tools, yeah.
I'm sorry, would you take question now? Or do you want me to wait till then?
How do you wanna?
I mean, you can take a question now,
Yeah.
it's fine.
Okay, sorry.
Okay.
I'm just wondering, I'm sure you have a discovery tool.
We do not.
We do not.
Oh, okay. Yeah, cause I always struggle with when to introduce a database like Active, or to introduce them to the discovery tool, so I'm sure others have that issue.
Yeah. We do not have a discovery tool.
Wow, okay. You have a catalog though,
We do.
and so
We actually-
do you introduce the catalog to them?
We don't
We
typically.
do not in writing 110 and 111 because this is more of an article-driven assignment. Some professors do request that we introduce books into
Okay.
the lesson, but that's usually like a subject-specific or like an upper-level class. For whatever reason, they don't want their students to use books.
What I usually do in the lesson is when I'm on the homepage showing them how to get to the databases, I'll mention where the catalog is and say, if you ever need to use the catalog, let us know, we're happy to help you. We just don't wanna spend too much time on it when they're not gonna be using it for their class.
Okay, thanks.
So we show some of the basic tools, preview function, obviously email, the citations, usually with the disclaimer of check it before you just continue with it. In print, we do try to personalize the demo based on the assignment, so we'll pick topics for our sample search to pair with what they're actually gonna be doing. And then we give them time to search on their own. Hopefully they have an assignment that they can work on, and we'll give them time. At this point, at the end of the class, we will do the assessment, but I'm gonna wait to go over what the assessment is until the end of, when we talk about writing 111, because it's the same for both, so I'm not gonna go through it right now. So for writing 111, we have, as we said, a very similar format. This is the anticipatory set. Make a list of words and phrases that could be used to describe this image. So we'll get words like beach, ocean, sand, water. Sometimes they're very creative and come up with like retirement. And so this anticipatory set is intended to get them to start thinking about keywords and then put it a little step further from the anticipatory set from 110, but also synonyms. And we're gonna be introducing the concept of Boolean in a few minutes from this anticipatory set, so get them to kind of think about other words that to describe the same, like a concept. And then we'll do our presentation on Boolean. We'll also do Boolean terms and like truncation and phrase searching. So this is a segment from the Boolean PowerPoint or presentation. We introduce the concept of and, so the Venn diagram, sleep habit and GPA, and so the results will contain all these terms. And then we have them do a little activity where we tell them, if you're a college student, stand up. So hopefully everybody would stand up. And then we'll say, so if you're, keep standing if you're a college student and also like sushi. So then some people will sit down, and so the people who are left standing will be a college student and like sushi. So that's just to visualize the concept of and. We'll do that for both of the other Booleans as well, so or and not. This is a way to get them to get up a little bit during the presentation as well as we, talk about active learning. Then after we do that, we'll talk about a little bit more about what and does and how it narrows down your search, because both terms have to be present in the database. After this, we'll do a activity where they get a board with Velcro that's meant to emulate the advanced search box. So if you want to show the blank.
You want the blank one or the?
I'll show you the blank one first.
Sorry. I'll show you both.
So this is what the blank board looks like. It's upside down. So that's what the blank board looks like. And then they'll get a packet with keywords, and this is what they're intended to do. They'll get keywords, they'll get their Boolean terms, and they'll get a topic, page with a topic, and then directions in case they needed to reread the directions.
Or they were on their phone.
Or they're on their phone. I'm trying to be nice. So they'll put this in order. While we're doing the presentation of the Boolean terms, we start putting, this is our example board, we start putting our example together to kind of show them how this will work and how to put it together. Each topic is different, so they'll, again, break up into groups like this, and we'll give them a board and stuff. After this, we'll go back, we'll do our database demo. This time we'll probably do usually 2 databases. We do Academic Search Premier and a ProQuest database. We base the ProQuest database based on what's appropriate for their topics that they're doing. Generally it's ProQuest Social Science, just because that's usually what most topics cover. We'll show them how to choose databases at this point. So Academic Search Premier, then pick a few others, and we'll tell them how to appropriately choose some databases to add in. Then we'll do advanced searching with the Boolean terms. We'll use this exact board to pull it into the databases so they can connect what they did in the activity to what they're actually going to do in the database and show them how it looked similar. We don't usually include not. Usually we'll explain that not is only used in certain situations, so we typically don't put not in, but to connect those concepts. And we'll do focus on the filters a little bit more. Certainly we'll go through peer review at this point, and then some of the others like publication date and those as well. And we'll adjust databases. Usually the topic that we have works for the writing classes that we've picked here. And we give them time to search on their own. We found that in both classes, but especially the 111s, we're helping students a lot with the topics and narrowing down mostly. As Kyle said, they get into the databases fairly easily. It's more of what they do with it once they get there. Then after this, we'll start passing out, we'll start with our anticipatory set. While they're still working individually on their computers, we'll give them an index card. They'll get one of 3 colors. We only have 2 because we need to order more. They'll get a green index card, a yellow, or a red. And that color card corresponds with the question that they're gonna answer. So they only have to answer one. I tell them to hold off doing anything with the index card till we're ready. Usually I wait till the professor's ready to dismiss them. And then we'll give the directions. We tell them not to put their names on it because it needs to say anonymous. Then they only have to answer one. Once they're done, they put it on the table, then they can leave. We have done this anticipatory set now for 2 semesters, so fall and spring. We have not yet done anything with the data, but it's gonna be an immediate summer project. We're probably do that pretty soon. And Kyle's doing most of the work with the anticipatory set data polling. So if anybody has any more questions.
Has a question about it, when we get to the question portion, I can tell you how I anticipate working with that data, because it's very difficult to quantify.
Yes, because it's all, obviously, as you can see, very reflective questions. So some more future plans with this project. We want to create some supplemental materials. We intend on doing an interactive tutorial that lays out the research process. We've done something very similar for the graduate nursing program, so we have an idea of how we're going to do this already. And then we're going to do some screencasts that demos database searching. It'll probably look or sound very similar to the demos that we do in class, But the idea is just to have them have another place where they can go after the face-to-face if they need to be reminded, or if they missed the class for some reason. We would like to incorporate some OER resources. Our colleague Jillian is very active in the OER movement on campus at the moment. She pretty much has headed it up. So when she's back, we're gonna try to maybe see if there's some stuff we can pull in to supplement the textbook for the writing classes. And we're gonna put this all in a subject guide, house it in all one place. None of this stuff is intended to replace the face-to-face contact. We still want them to come in, but it'll just be another area for them to go after the class if they have any more questions. They're obviously always welcome to come in, but we all know only a few from any class of 25 will actually come in for more help afterwards. So at least they'll have another place they can go to get to get some help.
All right, so how do you do this at your own institution? I have to say that the most integral part of creating a program like this at your own institution is the relationship, right? You cannot design a curriculum in a vacuum. You really need to have support from the faculty members so that you can make informed decisions. You need not only their support with allowing you the freedom to do what you need to do in the class, but also to get that feedback after the instruction session has wrapped up. How did they perform on their papers? Is there something, that they think the students would have benefited from more? And we constantly solicit that type of feedback from instructors to make informed decisions about our own curriculum design. I would say the first place to start would be with interested faculty, right? We all know that the biggest hurdle to doing something like this is faculty buy-in. The whole thing with Beth Richards kind of just landed in my lap, but I can say that I have faced a lot of rejection over the years. It's kind of like that whole concept of throwing pasta up at the ceiling. Like scientifically, I don't even know if that works, but like throwing it up to the ceiling and seeing what sticks. I've been rejected politely and not so politely, and this time it just kind of worked. You want to maybe identify some courses with mandatory library instruction because they already have to come in. You already have some of that leverage where you can not ram the curriculum in there, but you have, it's already mandatory, so you can say this is the direction I'd really like to go, and then you can start like a negotiation process if you think that the faculty is resistant. And then really identifying those areas of need. So we don't just do this for freshman writing. Like Diana mentioned, we found out about a year and a half ago that the graduate nursing program would now be offered completely online. Not to replace the face-to-face program, but just to increase the enrollment on campus. For us, we find that the graduate nursing students really vary in their research experience, and we've enjoyed a very fruitful face-to-face instructional program with them. So we decided to approach the program coordinator for at least the intro class at first, and we did develop a curriculum and a whole suite of online tools that kind of replicates what we've done for the freshman writing class, but tailored it more towards health science and nursing. That caught on, and we now offer a fully scaled curriculum because one of the professors who teaches the research intensive course later on in the sequence also wanted to do tools. So let me tell you how that went. I think we did that in 2 weeks. We created interactive tutorials, screencasts, assessment, the whole 9 yards. So this model is not just appropriate for freshman writing. You can really do it in any subject area. But if you, especially online programs, this is a great place because I feel like a lot of professors are somewhat uncomfortable with creating a curriculum for online, or they want to kind of adapt what they're doing face to face, and they really welcome this extra support. What's funny?
Oh, my chair fell back.
Oh.
Not you.
So once you've kind of identified like a relationship or somewhere where you want to start, you either want to start with a single course, although not ideal. But if you only have the option of doing a single course, maybe you can try to schedule several visits within the semester where you can kind of scale the curriculum. Ideally, you want a course series, whether it's 1 or 2, 3, 4, whatever, where you can kind of like build upon what you've done each semester, right, and expose the students to more and more of the information literacy concepts. Next, and this is sometimes the hard part of like kind of sitting down and figuring out what you want them to learn and how you're going to do it. Figuring out what you want them to learn is difficult because we all want to throw the kitchen sink into the lesson, right? A lot of times it's a one-shot session, so they need to learn this and this and this and this. I don't know about your students, but my students can handle like 2 concepts max. Even databases, we try not to show them more than 2, even 1, because they will glom on to like the last one that we've shown them, and then they'll forget everything else. And really, you want to try to incorporate some of that active learning into the skills retention, right? Make them responsible for some of it. And then don't be scared to revise it, right? We did these Velcro boards. I don't know if they're successful. We won't know until we start looking at the assessment data, and it took a long time, but if it doesn't work, cut it out. We don't mind. So that, I mean, that's just some advice for you. I don't know. At this point, we'll open the floor up for questions. Yeah.
Roughly how many sessions are you teaching in a semester?
At least 25.
Yourself or like the whole department?
I don't teach 25 freshman writing classes,
Okay.
but I teach at least 25 at least between
Alright.
that and all the subjects specifically. So our teaching load is quite heavy.
Yeah, so thinking about scaling out, we just started a first year experience course where information literacy is a requirement and it's one of the learning outcomes. So we're trying to scale out as much as possible, but there are only 3 librarians who teach. So just wondering how you're dealing with the course load, if there is an increased course load.
Yeah, we really just divide and conquer. I mean,
Okay.
there will be days when I teach like 3 back-to-back sessions,
Okay.
and we just do it and know that that's going to be the bulk of what we do that week, and try to plan, like do a lot of time management. I can say that if we keep on increasing, this will not be sustainable, so we may have to move some of this into like a flipped classroom sort of method where we're relying on the instructors, and really it will have to be instructors that we trust to deliver some of the content maybe through the LMS, right? And I can see that happening. You know, it's too much of a good thing, right? But certainly afterwards, if you want to continue the dialogue,
Sure.
can talk about it more.
Would love to.
Anybody else? Yeah.
I really think this is awesome, so congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
And the thing that I'm struggling with myself is, I don't have a great background in educational techniques. I just do things intuitively what would work for me. And these ideas like your PowerPoint, the way you go through the timeline of sources, this is something that I go over with people, but to have it graphically represented and handing out folders and having them do this is like a wonderful idea. So how long are your sessions, or do you find that you have to, can you do all of this in a 50-minute session?
Yes.
Yeah.
How long do you give them in terms of laying out sources in a timeline and that kind of thing?
So I would anticipatory set is about 5 to 10 minutes. The presentation and the activity can be like 20, 25 minutes.
Mhm.
The database demo doesn't take a ton of time because we're not really spending most of our time doing that, and I would say that's maybe 10 minutes, and then we give them like 10 or 15 minutes. I don't know if the math on all that adds up, but
But it works, you found it that
it does. And so some of our sessions are 50 minutes, and some of them are an hour and 15, and it's really easy to like contract and expand.
Mhm.
We originally developed both lesson plans to fit into a 50-minute session
Mhm.
because a lot of time that's what we get.
Mhm.
And especially with the freshmen, it is really all one shot.
Mhm.
But it's important to teach this to them, especially in 110, because this may be the only time that we see them throughout their entire college career.
Yeah.
So we have like tons of time. If
Yeah.
there are more questions, please ask them.
I have another question.
Sure.
The assessment, I'm working right now on developing assessment tools that are going to be compatible with the accrediting documentation that we have to provide, and also the frameworks that we are going by. How does your assessment, are you working that through as well to develop? I know you have things that you're gonna be analyzing this summer. Is that part of how you're approaching this, or?
I think that, we collect all the index cards, those will probably serve as our artifacts. For NEASC, I know that's like a huge part of
Yeah.
it. I have to look and see how long we need to keep those for. The assignment will probably be another artifact that we can contribute for NEASC. For me, the difficulty with the index card data is like, how am I quantifying that, right? Because everybody gives a different answer. And believe it or not, I was really skeptical about the index card assessment in the beginning. I didn't know that students would really take it seriously, especially because it's anonymous, but we always try to peek like after the students have left and see what they've put on there, and they really do take it seriously. So I think what I've decided to do with that, in an effort to have data to submit for NEASC, is I've decided to kind of come up with comment categories and like code the answers, so that I don't have to consider them each individually, but, because that would be totally unmanageable on the spreadsheet. But that we have some way to gauge where students are, their attitudes towards research and stuff. And, I'm not totally well-versed, especially in the NEASC updated standards, but I don't think there's a lot of specification, yeah.
We're going through the self-study next year.
Okay.
And the bar for reporting to NEASC is incredibly low. The only thing they require if you see their data reporting form is they want to know the number of sessions that are taking place in terms of informational literacy. You don't even have to demonstrate student learning. I think a good self-study will do that, but the bar as far as what are required to report is pretty low. It's kind of shocking.
Yeah, I know that we already record all like the number of sessions and all of that, but
Yeah, they're interested in numbers, as far as, that's my understanding.
which is unfortunate,
It is
right?
important.
At the
It's
end
a
of the
step
day.
backwards, I think, yeah.
I know for us, when we do assessment, we don't really believe in like pre and post tests. I don't think that they're super accurate when it comes to assessing like prior knowledge and retention of skills. For us, the assessment serves more as like the student success factor, right? And their comfort level, and it's more of like a self-reflection. So it puts more of the emphasis on them and less on like, okay, we did this, that's great, put a pat on our back. Like we really, and I think like in academia, we cite a lot of the times that we're all here for the students, and then some of the emphasis comes away from the students, but I know at least in our department, and the three of us have a really great working relationship where we can always bounce ideas off of each other. I think that's one thing that we're 100% unified on, is that we really want to make this meaningful for the students, and that's just one way. I can say that I have submitted, or I'm in the process of submitting a proposal to the Human Subjects Committee. We are going to be assessing the efficacy of the 110 curriculum starting in the fall, so stay tuned for that.
Wonderful, Grace, thank you.
Yeah.
So, with the database, use and then the demo, and then you have a hands-on, so do they have a worksheet that they're filling out for their hands-on?
No, they're really, our intention for the hands-on part is really them just start using the databases to find their sources. Or
And do you
if they-
encourage them to like save it to RefWorks or EndNote or anything for
We
them to
don't
save?
we don't subscribe to RefWorks.
Okay, well, whatever.
But we
Bibliographic
circulate the room to make sure that they're on task. Like you always have the student that has it open, and you don't, they're obviously not doing, so that's the student I'll start with, and I'll say like, hey, what are you thinking? And then we start the conversation, but usually the professor too will require them to find at least one article for their paper before they leave for the day.
Right.
And then check that off on their attendance sheet, so. No, we don't include a worksheet because we really want the incentive to be there for them to work on their own research, right?
Well, that's what I do with my worksheet, is I have them tailored to the class, so, what is the topic that you've chosen, what are your keywords, write down your keywords. And then I'll have them find a book, and they'll just go to Tool, and and then find an article, and then have them create a RefWorks account, send it out to RefWorks so they're saving it and then using it for their assignment.
We actually used to use a worksheet in one of the earlier iterations of this lesson, and we found that the worksheet really stressed the students out. They
Oh.
actually spent more time like trying to get the worksheet correct than actually doing the meaningful research, so we kind of scrapped it, and you know, I don't know if it's the right answer, but it kind of works for our population.
Yeah, and I think the most important part of that time for us is to go around and see where the students are. You know, a lot of times they'll be trying to do something on the databases, then you get to them, like, so how are you doing? Like, I'm just having trouble with my topic.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, and so then just having the time, like, they wouldn't have said anything if you didn't ask, like, so just having that time to like, how are you doing, and sitting down and being like, okay, so let's talk about your topic a little bit. That's really what we find is, like, what their time, and like telling them, giving them the words of wisdom, and like, look, it's okay if you have a little bit too broad of a topic and starting to see what's out there before
Right.
you really narrow it down and that sort of thing. So just really the walking around the room is really where we're just making sure that they check in, and the professor helps too.
Yeah, well, I'm doing that at the same
Yeah.
time too, and then I can also see from this sheet, if they have put down these keywords, and the keywords really aren't gonna help them, then I can
Right,
work
right.
with them, yeah.
We'll talk about the two, so keywords that you can plan on using and
Right.
stuff like that. Don't put the whole topic in the first line of the
Well, that's if they wanna put a question in, like they would search Google, they wanna put that in the database.
It's funny, we always mention that in our lessons too, like, okay, this doesn't work like Google, you can't, you know, we demoed it and they still do it. But once you show them once,
so once you show them how to break it off,
they're
pretty good about it.
Any other questions? Alright. I think that's it then. Thank you for attending.
Thank you.
Thank
The
you.
slides will be available on the website, at some point over the summer.
I like how you looked at Diana.
Yeah, that won't be till July.